So, hello and welcome back to the great outdoors because I figured why not do some multitasking today and do this recap outside because we've had this brief return to, I was gonna say late fall, but honestly, it is gorgeous out here. I'm wearing a flannel, but I don't really need it. It's gotta be like 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's gorgeous. And I was like, you know what? This weather is not right for this time of year. It's not what the weather's supposed to be, but I'm also not going to fight it because it's gorgeous and I can get outside without bundling up, which is really nice because we had that taste of winter last year or last week, last year. And in my head, I know that it's probably supposed to be much, much colder than it is. But my heart is like, perfect weather. Let's go for a walk. And I will just bring the Phoenix Transformed with me. And if I find some place that looks like a nice place to stop, then we will do our recap there. And lo and behold, I did. This place is gorgeous. Let me just flip you guys a second. It's another one of those dispersed campsites on a lake near me. And it's just so perfect and isolated and quiet and nice. And there's birds, which makes me happy. And thankfully, it's not too windy. Hopefully, it stays on the not too windy part because I don't want to have to like pause for wind. Anyway, we are going to be recapping chapter 6 of the Phoenix Transformed. I don't know why I just jumped. A stupid ladybug just flew down here and I jumped like it was a wasp. And if you remember, we left off with Tercel and Harrier and Sinarin and Shariah searching in vain for Bisochim, who seems to have disappeared. We also left the end of the chapter with an interesting conversation between Anirin, the spirit of elemental darkness who Bisochim has set loose on the world, and the Fire Crown, who Bisochim conjured up thinking that he was just an elemental, but no, he's actually basically the god of a destroyed people, the fire sprites. And Anirin and the Fire Crown seem to have made some sort of a deal where Anirin will stay in the Isvani Desert and try to corrupt either Bisochim, Harrier, or Tercel. And if she can do that, then the Fire Crown has agreed to join his cause to hers and, take over the world. That seems very worrying to me. And yeah, we're just going to have to see what is going on as we jump back in and recap Chapter 6, Prelude to War. Not gonna lie, that chapter title is a bit distressing because war is never what we want. And the chapter opens with Tercel waking up and realizing that he basically dreamed or had another vision about the Red Man and the Fire Woman, as he's always been thinking of them, and how it's a little bit odd that they now have actual names that he can call them by, because for the last year he's just been calling them the Red Man and the Fire Woman. He also wonders why he's still having visions. Visions, as far as he knows, are nothing to do with the wild magic or with the high magic. They seem to only be a part of the wild magic, and he doesn't have a clue. He's like, either what he's seeing is he's seeing things that are happening right now, which we kind of know he is, or it's just nothing related to the high magic. It's just completely, he's confused. And a little scrap of what he dreamed or had a vision of comes back to him. And that is the part where the Fire Crown had said even the High Mage would do. And that even really confuses him more. He does kind of wonder idly if maybe now more High Mages are being born and maybe this won't all fall on him, although he doesn't really think that that's the case. We then shift over to Harrier, and Harrier has his own set of things that he is wondering and worrying about. Quoting, Harrier wasn't sure which was worse, expecting to be dead and then not being dead, or not being sure whether or not he was happy to still be alive. Or maybe the worst part was he was starting to lose count of how many times he had been in this situation. Was this the third? The fifth? He wasn't sure. Of course, this was the first time he had ever found out that darkness had definitely been summoned back into the world again for the first time since the Great Flowering and was free to do as it pleased. So that part was new. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't even sure of what not to do. What he was sure of was that Bisochim was not shadow-touched. Bisochim had been tricked. Just like Lysalon, the mock mage in the festival tales, but that didn't mean that he hadn't been really stupid. And it didn't mean that he shouldn't pay for what he had done, because it didn't matter how badly you had been tricked or how much you wanted to believe something was true. Summoning up demons is never a good idea. And that is a very good point. And I think that's the crux of the big difference between this trilogy and the first trilogy is, yeah, Lysalon was sort of deluded, but not as severely as Bisochim, and by proxy, all of the Isvani save the Nalzindar, and that makes a lot of complexity in this trilogy that I like and makes me wrestle with all sorts of questions that I don't think I have the answers for. I don't think anybody really does. Harrier wrestles a little bit more. He spent most of the night awake and thinking, thinking about things like he's now killed people. And it was for self-preservation, but he never wants to do it again. But if it were being put on a balance where he has to kill Bisochim and that would save tons of people from Aniran, well, he would do it. Although he doesn't think that it would do it, and it's made even more complex by the fact that he now knows that if anyone kills Bisochim, then Saravase, his dragon, would also die. He also thinks about, how little he truly knew when he started off on this journey. Like, he had never really thought about dragons. He had never really thought about unicorns. And he got to know Ankeldar, and he's known Tercel his whole life, and he watched Tercel from the minute he was bonded to Ankeldar start worrying about the fact that Ankeldar's years were bound to Tercel's and how unfair that seemed. And Harrier's like, Bisochim also was wrestling with that, and he knows how much it absolutely has driven Tercel crazy, and he thinks that that's probably what initially went wrong with Bisochim. He's not sure of that for sure, but he does know that Bisochim is not evil, but maybe he's been driven mad. And then he stops and wonders, he's still planning on trying to send Bisochim and Tercel and their dragon off to the Elven lands, because that is the only thing he can think of to do, and he doesn't feel really good about himself for that. We then switch over to Harrier is now getting up, and a little bit of an amusing conversation between Shariah and Sinarin and Harrier about the lake that is now where the Lake of Fire used to be, and how it's more water than Shariah and Sinarin have ever seen in their lives. And then it turns into another argument because Harrier is still wearing his garb that he's been wearing since they left Tarnatha Atreyu, and Shariah wants him to dress in wild mage robes. Side note, I might have said that he did dress in it in the last chapter recap, but I was wrong because I was getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Shariah wants him to dress as a proper wild mage. Harrier doesn't want to, and Tercel points out that, maybe he should, because maybe then all of the Isvani would actually be more inclined to listen to him and do what they need to do. Harrier wants to know what exactly are they supposed to do, and Shariah says, obviously, this place is accursed. The Isvani must return to the Isvai. You should put on the blue robes and tell them that. Harrier doesn't think that they're going to listen to him, but he does think that they should stay together, because if they scatter to the four winds and leave the lake that is now where the Lake of Fire was, that Aniran will just pick them off, and that's probably not good, because that would just continue adding to her power, and that's not what they want. They don't know what exactly they need other than to get a bunch of elves down here, but they definitely don't want all of the Isvani people scattering to the four winds and just being used to fuel Aniran's magic. Harrier points out that he has no idea how he is supposed to move all of these people anywhere, and to forestall any sort of arguing, he finally just gives up, takes the pile of wild mage blue robes, and goes to get dressed, but also starts thinking about all of the Isvani and everything like that, and a lot about the wild magic. What he thinks about the wild magic does not comfort him at all. He thinks, quoting, "The dark tricked Bisochim, and Bisochim killed the wild mages, and Xanatar found out that they were dead, so Xanatar destroyed the Atreyu cities and killed everyone in them. And the wild magic could have made any part of that not happen. And it didn't. And I don't know why. And I still believe that the wild magic is ultimately good. And I hate believing that, because even if it's good, it won't keep people safe. Not particular people, like Tyr and Sinarin and Shariah and my ma and Da. It's for something a lot bigger, and I'm afraid of something so big that it could let 10 cities be destroyed because maybe it just doesn't notice. Maybe they're too small for it to see, or maybe they had to be destroyed so that the good could win. And maybe the wild magic thinks that all the deaths will be worth it. I guess. If all those people died to keep the dark from coming back, and if you could ask all of them if they would do that they would probably say yes, but nobody did. And I guess if I have to die and all the people in those tents down there have to die for the same thing, it's okay, but I thought there'd be battles. And I thought somebody would ask us. But this way, if I die, if they die, none of us will ever even know what it was for. And that's very true. I mean, Harrier knows in his heart that the wild magic is good, that it does serve the light, but it's also very impersonal and very ruthless and in a lot of ways cruel, and that's another thing that he's wrestling with. While he's wrestling with that, he is getting dressed in the wild mage robes, thinking that there is absolutely no reason that he should have to dress like a flower just to make everybody happy, but he's gonna do it. He gets dressed and steps out, and everyone's kind of impressed. In fact, Tercel thinks that Harrier looks kind of intimidating. And so, with the now intimidating Flower Harrier, they're all going to go see if they can find Bisochim now that it's been some time, and maybe Bisochim's had some time to think about everything and come to the conclusion that maybe he should help. So off they go, and they actually find him, which is kind of good. And Tercel tries to persuade Harrier to let Tercel do the talking. Harrier's like, why should I? And Harrier's like, well, because you'll probably hit him, and that's not going to do any good. Harrier concedes, and they approach Bisochim, who is like, why are you even trying to talk to me? We're enemies. I'm the enemy of everything that you hold dear. I've tried to kill you. And Tercel's like, yeah, you are. And yeah, you did. And I don't know how I'm supposed to work with you or forgive you, but evidently I really need to. Harrier's kind of surprised by this because this whole time, this whole year, going through everything they've gone through, he's always had this image in his head of Tercel as being the same kid that they've always been. You know, he kind of thinks that he and Tercel haven't been changed, but as Tercel and Bisochim are talking, Harrier actually looks at Tercel and realizes that he's not the same as he was when they left Arameth. That grief and fear and the things that he had lost are etched in Tercel's face, and suddenly Harrier wonders what people see when they look at him. Bisochim is saying now that he can't summon Saravase. He can't deal with her disappointment in him. And Tercel tells him that I know that you were tricked, but Saravase will forgive you because obviously you're sorry. I know Ankeldar would forgive me, and he might be disappointed in me, but he would forgive me. And Harrier butts in with, yeah, and the longer you wait to call her, the more she's going to have for you to forgive you for, because you might be standing around here thinking about how sorry you are that you were tricked, but that demon you let loose, it's not sorry to be free. And if we're really lucky, maybe it's just trying to hide, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky. Bisochim finally agrees because the only thing that they can do is hopefully go to the elves. So Bisochim turns and summons Saravase. This causes Tercel a lot of pain because he knows that it's not Ankeldar, but for a minute, seeing a dragon wheeling towards him, his heart does a little jump, and that just makes him miss Ankeldar all the more. Saravase lands, and Tercel, looks at her and is just thinking that he knew that dragons came in lots of different colors. Petrovich, Sandalon's dragon, had been blue, and that Saravase is a color that sometimes would be called red, but at the same time that her wings are a glowing orange red. Her scales glittered in every shade from hot ruby all the way down to a dark garnet, almost black. And just, he thinks that she's beautiful. He's surprised to also see that she's a little bit smaller than Ankeldar was, about 2/3 his size, but that still means that she's almost the size of a full-rigged sailboat. She lands and just stands gazing at them. And this is the part that really kind of shocks Tercel and makes Harrier very uneasy. "I have summoned Saravase at your bidding," Bisochim said. "Let us go." Wait, aren't you going to introduce us?" said Tercel. Bisochim turned away from him, as if his words held no meaning. "Come here," he said harshly, and Saravase stepped forward. No. Slunk. Head down, crouching, and it would have been ridiculous in something that size if it weren't so pitiful. Tercel inhaled sharply, trying to conceal his shock, though no one was looking at him except Harrier, who seemed just as stunned as he was. Harrier wouldn't use a tone like that with one of the port's sentry dogs, and Harrier didn't actually like the port's sentry dogs. Tercel tries to introduce himself to Saravase, and Bisochim says, "She will not answer you, boy. She doesn't speak any longer. Come if you want us to do your bidding." And with that, he mounts up, tells Tercel to get up behind him, and Harrier says goodbye and to be careful. And off they fly. Harrier thinks as he watches them leave that he doesn't like it. He knew that Bisochim was not right in the head, but watching the way he treats his dragon after watching Tercel and Ankeldar for all of the time that they were together, it really galls him. But he also knows that it's their only chance to hopefully contain Anirin, and so with a lot of hope, he turns to Sinarin and Shariah and says, "And so what do we do while they're gone? They should be back in a couple of hours. It should only take them a couple of hours to get into the Elven lands, and I'm sure that the elves will immediately see what needs to be done, and this will be great." Shariah says, "Well, now we shall go, and you shall call upon the Amare to hear your counsel." Now, I don't know. I did see that it is somewhere in here, but I don't know where I did it. But the Umare are basically the tribal leaders, and then they have their seconds in command, which are, I think, called Chamatans, and that is their second in commands. And Shariah wants Harrier to go and counsel all of the leaders of all of the tribes and let them know that they need to go away from this area, because everybody can see that the spells that were maintaining it are visibly failing. In the one day since Anirin has broken free, the grass is dying, The fountains are drying up, and it seems like the only water is now in that big old lake. Harrier isn't sure if this is because Bisochim just gave up on maintaining the spells, or if maybe something about an iron breaking free broke all the spells, but he does know that if all of these Isvani people stay here, they're gonna die, and it's gonna be a slow, terrible death. So he decides that logically he should maybe convince them all that they should go back at least to the Isvani desert, but maybe even beyond that, and leave this area before they all die. Seems logical to him, and no matter the fact that he thinks he is now dressed like a giant bright blue flower, and he doesn't know how anyone would listen to him, Shariah and Sinarin seem to think that they will. So they go towards the tents, and people start immediately at least giving him a little bit of deference, and they immediately also start questioning him and Sinarin and Shariah about what the heck is going on. Why are all the wells dried up? Why is the grass dying? And most importantly, why did they see Bisochim and his mighty dragon just fly away? Shariah tells everyone that the wild mage will speak, but only to the leaders, and that just causes more fuss and hubbub. And now some of the leaders are coming to Harrier and just yelling. There's a lot of fuss. Xanatar, the leader of the young warriors that attacked the Atreyu cities, starts again yelling that Harrier is a demon, and Harrier is just over it. He's like, do you have any idea how annoying you are? If I were a demon, you'd be dead. Yes, all of the wild mages in the Isvai are dead. I'm from Arameth, you idiot. And then he walked a little bit faster away from them, trying to go to where hopefully he can meet with all of the tribal leaders. People call out to them as he is going through the tents, but he's trying to ignore everyone. Shariah does arrange so that they can go to one of the tribal leaders' tents, but before they can get there, Liafa, Shariah's grandmother, invites them to go and eat some flatbread and drink some kafea, and that should give all of the tribal leaders time to gather and be ready to receive his counsel. So they all head off to Liafa's tent, and she is sitting there talking kind of small talk, and this starts annoying Harrier. He's really sure that Tercel should be back soon with help, but he feels like he's having a lot of his time wasted in small talk. Liafa asks him, you don't think that Bisochim is someone who sought your life now? And Harrier, he's very over it. He tells Liafa that no, Bisochim did try to kill us, but he was tricked into doing it, and he is now heading to the elves to try and get help. Harrier points out that they need to leave, and he needs to speak with the tribal leaders. He's pretty well done with just sitting and being polite, and so they move on to where all of the tribal leaders are waiting, which takes a while, and Harrier is just, he's, I don't even know how to put it. He's over all the formalities, but at the same time, he knows that he needs to do things the right way so that these people will listen to him. He meets with all of the tribal leaders, although that's not all that's in the tents. I mean, he's got Xanatar following him. A bunch of the people who attacked the Atreyu cities follow them. And there's a whole lot of people around this tent. Harrier looks around at all of the leaders, and he realizes that most of the people are maybe about his parents' age. There's one or two that are about the same age as Leofa, who is the oldest Isvi that he has ever seen, and that at least a third of the group are women. So seems like a very egalitarian society. I don't know if that's the right word. And oh my gosh, that is another ladybug. So many ladybugs. I don't even know if these are actually ladybugs. Are you going to crawl on me? No? All right, well, stay out of my water. All right, so we are now in the tents, and Harrier is going to address all of the leaders and anybody else in hearing distance. He does think about the fact that he hates public speaking, but here goes nothing. My name is Harrier Gillian, he said firmly. Best to start with simple facts, he told himself. I was born in Arameth. Several moon turns ago, a unicorn named Kerta brought me the 3 books and told me I was going to become a night mage. I got here. Only a demon would dare mock the tale of Kellen, said Xanatar, pushing his way through to the front of the standing spectators and glaring at Harrier. Where is Bisochim? Gone, and no one may say where? For 10 nights the tale has been in my mouth, told to any who wished to hear. At Taranatha Atreyu, demons defended the city, and when through the power of the true balance, I and my army captured them. Bisochim has gone to the Veiled Lands, said Harrier. He stood up. He had no intention of staying seated while Xanatar towered over him. He called Saravase. That's his dragon's name, if you care. And he went to the Veiled Lands with Tercel. You know, my friend, that's his name. To ask the elves for help. To slay the demon? Xanatar mocked. No, Harrier said. He took a deep breath, reining in his temper with an effort. There was more at stake here than just who was right. The Isvi, who had followed Xanatar when he had led them as an army, would probably be just as willing to follow him now. Xanatar wouldn't have to do much to become not just only Umara, the only Umara that the Isvi had. He wouldn't have to do much to become their king. Harrier said, Bisochim is flying Tercel to the Elven lands on Saravase. Tercel is the one who is going to ask the elves for help, since the Elven Queen knows that he is the chosen champion of light. No matter how many times he said that, it still sounded ridiculous. Lies, Xanatar said. Look, you were there yesterday when Bisochim said that neither Tyr or I was a demon. So were a bunch of other people. So either Bisochim told you the truth yesterday or he's been lying to you all along. Which do you think it is? The Isvani people start whispering and passing all of these words back and forth through the ground, or through the crowd, which is getting bigger. Xanatar is just glaring at Harrier, and Harrier doesn't want to have a confrontation, but he knows it's coming. Xanatar says, This is the time of the breaking of tribes, and all the young hunters are sworn to hold each other as their blood kin, a tie above the ties of family or tribe. I do not believe that you hold wisdom for the Isvani, or your words, for if they did, then surely Bisochim would be here to tell us that. He smiles at Harrier, sure that he's outfoxed them. And at that, Harrier has just had enough. "All right," said Harrier. "I'm done. I'm leaving. Maybe you'll all still be alive when Bisochim gets back. I doubt it. You see, the only water here is in that lake up there, and it could vanish tomorrow, but that's not your actual problem. There really is a demon loose. Tercel and I were sent to stop her, but we were too late, and she's free. The rain yesterday, that was Bisochim protecting you from her. If you're really lucky, she won't come back and kill all of you." He looked down at Omazad, the tribal leader. "Thank you for your hospitality. I guess there really isn't anything else to say. I hope things work out for you." "But have you not come to tell us how to fight the false balance?" said the leader, sounding bewildered. "Don't any of you get it yet? There is no false balance," cried Harrier. "There's only the balance. And the demon. She lied to Bisochim. Bisochim lied to you. Bisochim lied to you. And because of that, you, Xanatar, and everyone who followed you, murdered thousands of innocent people because of an iron. Oh, and now an army is actually going to come down from the north. Not because they're evil. They're going to come because you killed..." "You lie," Xanatar roared. "At Tarnatha Atreyu, At Tarnatha Atreyu, you survived because Tercel didn't kill you. He didn't think it was fair to use magic against you. He knew that you had been lied to." Harrier locked eyes with Xanatar. He couldn't remember any time in his life when he had been this angry and had not actually hit something. "I wish he had killed you. All of you. Maybe then everyone who hadn't been with you would now get the chance to live. Maybe I could convince them that there is no false balance, no true balance, just the same balance that there ever was. And, you know, everybody keeps talking about what the wild magic wants and how it's going to take care of them. And being a wild mage sucks. It really sucks sometimes because I actually know that the wild magic doesn't care about me, Xanatar. And it doesn't care about you, and I'm not really sure what it does care about, except I know whatever it cares about is big and good. I serve the wild magic, and I'll die for it, and I hope by the light that you can say the same thing about whatever it is you believe in, because for the last year, my best friend and I have been trying to get here before the dark got loose, and we failed. And it's loose. And Tercel is still trying to stop it, and I hope he can, because I have no idea how. Not one. And if Aniran decides to come back here before Tercel and Bisochim get back with help, you're all going to die. And I'm not going to stay here and argue about whether I'm a demon or not. Get out of my way." When he had started speaking, he had been furious. And by the time he finished, Harrier was just tired. There wasn't room between the bodies of men and women sitting on the carpet, but he stepped carefully over and between them, and the ring of people backed away to let him pass. They ask him where he's going. What is he doing? And he just tells them, "I'm going home." And that is where the chapter ends, with a confrontation that I feel like was definitely necessary. I feel like Xanatar needs to realize that he was just as duped as Bisochim, and that everything he thought he believed in and thought was doing that was right really truly wasn't. Anyway, that is where the chapter ends, and I hope that I did an even halfway decent job of recapping it, because sometimes I really feel like, let's look at the lake. Sometimes I really feel like I don't know if I'm doing a decent job recapping this. I'm trying, but I don't know. Anyway, I do enjoy trying, though, so I'm going to keep trying. And maybe if I watch enough, like, people who do book reviews, maybe I'll figure out a way to do it more gracefully. I see ducks out there. I see a whole bunch of ducks. I don't know if we can actually see them, because I don't know if I can zoom that far. Oh, yep, those are ducks. I am definitely enjoying this weather. Anyway, I do really appreciate the fact that this book is so much more, like, morally gray and very complex, because it does make me think a lot. And I appreciate being made to think, even if sometimes I just want light and fluffy. But no, this book definitely makes you think a lot. Anyway, that's about it. I am going to walk back home and probably make some food while this uploads. There is a big part of me that just wants to sit here for the rest of the day. Which wouldn't really work, because then you guys would not have a chapter recap at all today. So I better get home and get that done. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope that any of that made sense, because sometimes I really wonder if anything I say makes sense. But I will see you next time.